Hi, folks. Tom Johnson Midland here to start off our class on journaling. Journaling has been a tool for people to gain access to deeper parts of themselves for thousands of years. For as long as people have had the craft of writing, they've had the ability to journal the things that are going on inside. And I think what's important about this process for you to understand is that really at first we think we are writing what's coming from here. We stop, we think about it, we put it onto paper. What we don't recognize is really what we're doing is putting what's in here on paper. And the longer we spend with a pen or a pencil and a pad of paper or a leather-bound journal, whatever it is that we're writing into or writing with, the longer we spend with that process, the deeper in we go, so that we begin to pour out who we are in ways that we are not expecting to pour out. And there's this wonderful line that was found on a papyrus scroll in 1948 in the Qumran Desert, very near the Dead Sea. And it was in a scroll. It was entitled The Gospel of Thomas, which I happen to enjoy the title. And it says, if we allow that which is within us to come out, that which we allow out will be the thing that saves us. But if we do not allow the things that are within us to come out, the things within us will destroy us. And this has always been the central core vision that I've had for what it means to be a human and to be on the path of therapeutic growth or mending, right, or healing into life or just growing in general. So with that in mind, I'd like to share with you some ideas about the kinds of things that we can do in journaling. In a future session, we'll talk a little bit about a real focused project called Ethical Wills and how to use your journal to write out ethical wills. And then in another session, we'll talk about writing letters or mementos to people and doing some life review in journals so that we can leave those behind for people as well, stories and ideas and things that have come into our life. So first, let's just take a look at journaling in general. And keep in mind that this is a two-part process. Journaling always is. First part of the process is to put onto paper that which is within us, right? So we want to write things down that we're thinking or we're feeling or we're intuiting or are coming to us in our lives. The second part of the process is one that people sometimes forget, and that is after we've begun the journal, after we've kept it for a bit, is to go back into it and start reading it from the beginning, moving forward. And then what we will see is we're going to start to see our lives as other people see them. And this is an important part of the healing process or the mending process. And while I know that the focus of this group is to learn journaling for those people who are hospice patients or people who are at end of life, there is still healing and mending that goes on in our lives. Every day we breathe is another opportunity to heal things, to bring them to resolution, to move them from a place where they don't feel so good into a place where they feel better, right? Even those cracks in our lives can be mending and healing places. And while that statement that things are stronger, right, where the breaks are in our life, that a leg once broken is stronger in the broken places, although that's not really true, it is a very, very powerful image that there can be strength rebuilt into areas where we are broken. And I think back to a dear friend who was providing some direction and formation for some people. And it happened that it was a couple who both were clergy in the same denomination, but different churches. And they were having some difficulty in their relationship with one another. And so part of their therapeutic process was for my friend to take a chalice that was ceramic and to wrap it in a cloth and tap it with a hammer. And it broke into several pieces. And the goal of their time together was to put together the chalice, put it back together, to strengthen it by gluing it in place. And and using some really good strong glue and some months and months of talking about the issues that they were having with their respective jobs and how that was impacting their life. It came back together again through time, through the hard work of all of those present in those sessions. And when they had finally finished using it, it was given back to them again. And now it was encouraged for them to somehow use that in a celebration. Either for them, since they were clergy, they were used to celebrating communion. But it was also a suggestion that maybe at a common meal that they sat together with to fill it with wine or to fill it with the beverage of their choice and use that during the meal and share that cup to show that what had done some damage into their lives and had brought some damage into their lives had now been repaired and was being turned towards being useful. Right? So in many ways, that's what the therapeutic process is all about, is finding the damage, finding the broken places, and somehow turning that into usefulness for our own growth and development. So let me pull up that article that I wanted to share with you. You can, if you would like this article, all you have to do is talk to the person who gave you the link to this video, and they will make it available to you in paper format. So what we've done here, and I have to unfortunately change glasses so I can read it. So what we've done here is we've put together a series of possible options for what we can write in the journal. Now remember, we're talking two parts to a journal. First part, you write it. Second part, you go back and you look at it. So that's how we're going to break this conversation down for the rest of our time together. First, let's look at the kinds of things that you can write or do in your journal. So here we see you can write only questions, okay, that you're having about an issue or an experience or people or situations in your life. So write only questions. Instead of writing how you feel, just write the questions that come up in your mind about those things. Or you could write only descriptions of what you're experiencing. So you could write what you see or hear or taste, right? Those are part of the descriptive process, but you can write those things down. You could only write your feelings about what's going on, how you feel about particular situations, how you feel about different pieces of those situations. You could write as if you're writing a letter to someone who's going to help you process your life, which in fact you are. Really, your journal is really a way for you to write a letter to yourself so that you can help yourself in the healing process. You know, one of the things that people first think that counseling is going and sitting and talking to somebody who's going to give you advice. And in reality, any good therapist, any good counselor will not really give advice. Instead, what they'll do is they'll point you back to yourself to help you find out what the answers are that you're questing for from your own journey itself. And as you continue to do that more and more and more over time, eventually what happens is, as you are sitting with the person who is performing that therapeutic presence, as you're sitting with them and telling them the stories that you have to share, you then become the therapist, because you then hear, after practicing this for a while, you then start to hear where the issues are and what directions you already know that you could consider to go in and which directions you could consider not to go in. So really, again, the therapeutic process goes from reflecting outwardly to another person to then at some point being able to reflect interiorly from what you have shared. And that's really just what's going on. So really, you're going to write that letter to someone, and that someone is really going to end up being you. You could write poetry about what is going on, okay? This is one that I particularly enjoy doing because poetry tends to be filled with a lot of what we call juicy images, images that are very full of meaning, and images that sometimes people might not normally use to equate with that particular thing that they're thinking of, okay? You could write a list of words that kind of get at what you're going through. Just a list of words. They can be a list of your emotions about that thing. It can be a list of words that describe that thing. But again, not sentences, not phrases, not two words, just a list of single words, one right after another. You could write down statements that you have heard others make that are important to you about whatever it is that you're trying to deal with, or just whatever it is that you're writing about. You could draw what's going on, not only draw what's going on, but you could draw what you're feeling, and you could draw what you're seeing or hearing or tasting or smelling. You could draw it out. You could paint it out. You could use colored markers and pencils and crayons. So again, a lot of that's going to depend on the kind of journal that you get. I tend to really like to use journals that either have a graph paper in them or are blank. And just because I like to also draw, not just write. So again, when selecting your journal of choice, you might want to think about what you're going to do with that. Right? You could journal only what you're thinking, only thoughts. Okay, you could journal only what you're feeling. That is your heart. What are you feeling? What are the emotions? Or you could journal what you're desiring or hoping. And that's really where the soul is. The soul is tied up with your hopes, your dreams, your imagination. Music and art are also soulful kinds of things. So you can use all of these prompts to decide which direction you want to go in the writing of your journal or the crafting of your journal if you're going to draw or sketch or paint. Now, that being said, that's the first portion. That's the place where we dump out that which we are feeling, that which we are seeing or thinking or intuiting or hoping or desiring onto the page, either through words or through images. And actually, technically, you could, if you wanted to journal, you could really do, and you don't feel like you are particularly artistic, you could kind of go the Mod Podge route and go through magazines and find images or pictures from your own cameras that describe what it is you're going through. And you could do like a little, almost like a little collage, or you could paste them in there. Again, it would be, I think, much more intuitive to take those impressions and those feelings and put them into words, at least for what we're going to do in the second half, which is go back again and try to see where we were at. While painting and while putting images that are pictures into your journal can help you through periods where you don't have words for what you're going through. At some point, the dumping out of who we are onto the page via words strikes a little bit more of a nuanced representation of who we are. You know, the words, because of the process that we go through in thinking of the specific word that we will use to put on paper, reveals a little bit more of who we are when we have to search and find and choose and then put it down, as opposed to when we're searching and we're going to grab a picture that is similar to, but not exactly very specific around the feelings or thoughts that we're having. So again, the word has a little bit more strength, but it doesn't mean on a day when you're not feeling like words are coming that you can't do the sketching, painting, or cutting out of pictures, okay? So I would recommend doing this for about a week, and then at the end of the week, come back. And these are the kinds of questions that you're going to ask yourselves as you look at the work that you've done in your journal. What does this reveal about this person's heart, right? So try to think of the journal as if it's something you found on a desert island, or you found tucked away in a special historic crate that your family has been carrying around with them for years, right? That crate's called your heart, but you open that crate and you find this text and you're reading it. Now think of it as some other person, okay? What does it reveal about their heart? What does it reveal about how that person thinks? What does it expose of that person's hopes and desires? So one of the things, if you know me, you know that I kind of deal in a series of maybe paradigms, and the biggest paradigm that I deal with in terms of us as human beings is that we have at least 4 central areas of concern in our lives. We have mental things we think, we have emotional things which we feel, we have hopes and desires, and then we have the things that we do that are a part of our physical nature or our body. And in essence, right, this is the mind, that's the thoughts, the heart is the emotions and the feelings, The soul is the place where desire and hopes and dreams and connection with other people come in. And then the body is our place that carries all that apparatus around, but then also has sometimes its own life. So another question we can ask is, how is God or the spiritual life, if you're not a religious person, but you are spiritual, how is the spiritual life revealed in these pages? And again, what is spirituality? What is soulfulness? So when it comes to soulfulness, if you're not religious, one of the things you can think of is what I've shared so far: hopes and dreams, right? Connections with other people. But then also the soulful and spiritual part of our lives consider and encompass things like music and art, beauty, wonder, awe, amazement, grandeur. These are all spiritual things in our lives. And so what is it that gives you a sense of wonder? And when you look back into your journal, where do you see that sense of wonder or that sense of beauty? Is there a common thread in this journal that you're reading? Is there a theme that comes up every day? Do you sense a direction that this person is headed? Like when you read this, are you reading it almost like it's a novel and you're like, I can predict what comes next, even though you really know what comes next? Can you, as you're reading it, as if it's a piece found in a treasure box, right? Can you predict where it's headed? What has been revealed about this person? Just in general about their life. Where is love in this whole process, right? Where is nurturance in this process? What is this person yearning or crying out for or to? Do you hear this person crying out for resolution from a higher power, or resolution with a spouse, or resolution with something that they've done in their life, right? What are they calling out for, crying out, or yearning? What has helped you grow from this work that you're reading? And who would benefit from this kind of work? Is there anybody that you can think of that really would gain access to some really powerful things because of having read this journal? So this is our first foray into the life of the journal and the journaler, which is you. Let's provide a couple of takeaways. One, you need to find yourself a nice journal and a suitable writing implement, whether it's a pen or pencil. And you know as well as I do, you write differently with a pen that's a fine point. You write differently with a pen that is a little bit larger point to it. You write differently when it's a roller ball. So you have to pick which of those pens is going to support the kind of work you want to do. You also write differently with a pencil or a marker. So pick the tool, right? And then also pick the journal. Is it going to be a composition book that you can pick up anywhere? Is it going to be a special order leather-bound journal because you want to leave it to people? Is it just going to be a yellow pad of paper, legal sheets? So select those two things and then get busy. Start at least to write daily, right? Put the date on there, put the day, something that can equate where it fits in time so that when you go back or the person you leave it to goes back, they can see where it fits into which segment of that person's life, into which portion of my own existence did that fit. And then just write. You can choose any of those things that were mentioned in the previous list to write about, right? Or you can choose any of those sets of questions to go back and read into the writing that you're digesting maybe a week after the fact. So give yourself a good week. Try to write every day. Try to write more than once a day if you can. And you can break it up. I sometimes when I'm writing more than once a day, I put like just a line across the bottom of the paragraph where I ended the first portion, and then after I write something else, I'll do the same thing. So I can see that some kind of time has elapsed between, or that some kind of an idea shift has just occurred, and I'm going to write, even though it's the same time, I'm going to write about something a little bit differently. So, okay. So I'm hoping that this has been helpful. Again, keep in mind, we're going to spend some time in future sessions talking about writing an ethical will, which is really a beautiful way of handing on to people what it is you hold in your heart and in your mind and your soulful self, your dream side, what you hold inside of you about who they are. not only positive thoughts and memories that you have about them, but also just your hopes and dreams for that person and how you've always thought of them during your life. So that's ethical wills. And then we'll talk a little bit more about life review and sharing stories of different places so that your journal can become not only a place for just writing what's going on each day, but it can be a way to project to people what you think and feel about them through ethical wills, or a way to project to people what happened in your life that you see as the most important by going back into it and mining the stories that come forward. So thanks for spending some time with me. I will see you in a little bit when we do round two, journaling and ethical wills.